my friend. Would you like to tell your fellow Americans and Massachusetts residents, like, where you go to school, what grade you're in, and why you're continuing to still go to college in the midst of these conditions?
All right. So, yeah, I'm in my technically my senior year at UMass Lowell. I guess my major, as you kind of heard Yuko and I discussing today, is kind of up in the air, but I've always been in creative pursuits at UMass Lowell.
Same.
So I guess that's what you could say I'm doing there. And I think the only reason I'm still in school is to have that outlet to be creative. It's the only thing keeping me sane. Like, obviously I have this commitment to make money and like pay for things and like, like rent, like groceries, like gas money, like other car
to be an independent human being in the United States.
Exactly, right. It's brutal. And it's
Not
like
brutal.
and it's like I've been working as a laborer throughout this, like doing like masonry work, and like that's like good money, it's good pay, it's cash, it's under the table, like it's been working really well for me, but at the same time it's like, damn, I can't do that life forever. I'm gonna brutalize my body. I don't want to get paid in cash my whole life and have to try and like duck.
I hope the pandemic, like once we come out of this, I hope it sparks a larger, not only public investment in art, but just kind of like, I don't know, just professionally as a career, because we're constantly, pulling our thoughts and creative energy into helping other people kind of retell and share other, items of knowledge from their everyday experience.
Right.
But just like the masses of society is built to just run these mechanical corporations and, do a lot of great things in terms of getting people everyday resources, whether it's like medicine, food, clothing, like, a mode of transportation and all this stuff. But just the way art influences like the education of it, like I wish that started a lot earlier in a more well-rounded way, and not just like, you can just make little commodities and sell it in a shop, and that's the end all be all of you being your own boss as an artist.
Yeah.
There's so much out there. Like, why do we have to feel like we have to compete with this very pretentious and out of reach art world that has artificial amounts of billions poured into paintings that just some random rich person decides they want to buy?
Yeah, right. It's unfortunate that even in the, like, other than, that, like, selling your art, there's like that's like not why I want to be in architecture anymore, because it's like architecture is literally, it's like this classist art field. Like, you can only design buildings a specific way, and they're only accessible to certain people, and it's only one design. It's just,
if I want to help in the community, are you really gonna force me to build those small, brick houses and stuff, and make them as like, why can't I be innovative with project housing to create a more friendly environment? Like, why are you structuring it like a jail? Like,
no, exactly.
Why are you structuring it like just like a really run down like construction?
And the thing about that is, it's funny you say that. Like, there's what the hell do they call a residence hall in Vermont, at University of Vermont, and it was designed to be an anti-riot building, and that sort of floor plan and just the material is almost identical to a lot of like project designs, like the way they make them, like the brick and everything. It's like built in that anti-riot floor plan, and it's just like,
it makes you feel like it's barracks or something.
Exactly, but it's like, why subject people to that when they're just
United States
like
is living in the new modern version of the Roman Empire. Don't believe it? Look at the architecture
No.
for the Capitol buildings, for, you know, banks. Like,
No, Tremaine and I were
Yeah.
actually talking about that recently. Like, just the
when they say the truth is in front of us, we don't realize how much of that visually is true.
No, it is. And it's like you even hear it from our president because he was talking about wanting to bring back some architecture style, which is what Hitler wanted to do because he wanted to mimic, like you were just saying, the like Greco-Roman architecture, which is rooted in that concept. It's just so. Not to mention it's ugly.
Hey, I mean, to each his own. Like, I'm not gonna knock one particular style unless it's just so awful and hideous. I don't mind them. It's just the way. It's the way the understanding and the representation of this experience feels.
The intention.
Yeah. Everything just feels like the idea of modernity is made to feel very basic and rudimentary, but in a way where it becomes scenic, and it's like that scenicness that is supposed to gravitate people to it. But I feel like it's so easy to get absorbed in like that kind of. I don't like who's to call one design superficial and another, but it's like I know pop art when I see it.
No,
Like,
yeah, right.
And that's hard to explain.
No, that's a good.
In a way that
good parallel.
doesn't rub like a majority of the visual arts world like the wrong way.
Yeah.
I hate the particulars of I don't know what's come to be classic American culture, because I'm just like, isn't this taking from so many other cultures but just rewriting it completely as.
Yeah, that was honestly that was a point that was brought up in a critique of a classmate of mine's today, just because they'd used like a wood.
Mhm.
It was like a, you know, like not what the hell's the word, like wood shop kind of finished wood, like that
Yeah.
sort of thing, and everybody was just kind of like, oh, it's like that's like an Americana thing, but it's like, why? Like woodworking didn't come from America, like.
Or if it did, like what time period in America are
Yeah.
you really referencing?
And it's like you look at the woodwork in like Asia and other places like that. Like there's been crazy woodwork there forever. Like people have
Yeah.
always understood how to work with wood.
yeah, like I would know a pagoda roof when I
Yeah.
see one and be like, oh, that comes from Japan, like
Mhm.
that design or that style. But
Mhm.
just I feel like as far as everything I experience and we experience in American art, like we know it's a country of immigrants, but just the idea of the whitewashing of it, I feel like it registers to me in a really bizarre way in terms of learning about it as art, and like this is what this represents, like primitive art. I'm like, it's just Europeans calling like African art and other like
Yeah.
indigenous art like basic, but I'm just like, I don't know, but they weren't all about color, line, form the way Whistler was, but
Yeah.
and his observation of it, I feel like that's very fair and important in terms of like the argument for art in its own sake. But like, I gotta question that. If you buy the piece of
Yeah,
art, then you
right.
decided that it was art. Fuck
Yeah.
you. This is what happens when you commodify it, because now you have to feel like it justifies your purchase. And if someone makes you feel like, that was a ripoff, then you're gonna be like, the person didn't do
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
There's a spiritual experience to it,
Mm. No, there is.
and I'm trying not to sound like a hippie just pointing it out.
No, that's true though.
Yeah,
Not everybody sees art that way, I think it's...
yeah, no, absolutely. Fucking. Don't get me wrong, like Hollywood runs itself like some conspiracy theory Illuminati puppet shit, but at the same
it
time,
does.
a lot of what they make, like that is genuine art, bro. You want a real horror story, you don't have to look at all the bloody shit. You don't have to watch a Saw, watch Toy Story
Yeah.
4 when they fucking walk in that antique shop and then I forget what that doll's called. But yeah, like her minions, they're supposed to be like nutcrackers, but they're in tuxedos, and
yeah.
they're named Benson. But I saw that shit like when it first came out in theaters, and I was like, this is some freaky shit. This is like some Get Out level shit.
Yeah.
It's funny, dude.
That is
Like our movies, like okay, like our movies, like that is a distinctly American style, and just in terms of like the way we commercialize things is just insane.
God, yeah.
I'm just like, yo, fucking, this person is a genius. You know, you have to present things in such like a scenic, like there's like it's like a highly expensive like makeover, but the representation of it can sometimes fall flat in a way that just has this sense of bluntness, and I feel like it's the bluntness that's American, you know, and I feel like that's something we need to also embrace in our culture and our history, is like the bluntness of the trauma and the politics and like, you know, all these things. I feel like too many times we try to run away from certain stuff, and I guess it's a first world, like a financially speaking first world country, because they robbed all the resources, let's be real, but we don't explain it enough in that way. You summarize it in a textbook, but those were the real Pirates of the Caribbean. The Pirates of the Caribbean were not the people from the islands. It was the people coming to the islands, like... Yeah, so even based on kind of us just like chopping it up and I don't know, reflecting on our experiences with the pandemic, like what's something that you'd want other people to know, like that you've been going through since the start of your pandemic experience on campus?
Like as a student?
Yeah.
Like, so from like March to like now?
Mm-hmm.
Alright, so I think when this first started, it was like fucking horrible. I will say I think it kind of depends on the type of student you are. I think as a creative student, to have all your resources pretty much taken away at once is a very... It's just like a horrible feeling. Like we were kind of blindsided with the fact that we had to completely move out and shut down and like do all this stuff, and it's like I didn't have access to the stuff to like keep doing this, you know, like my I didn't have a computer that could handle the stuff that I had to be working on. I didn't have a safe space to be opening up fucking mineral spirits and like all this other shit I was working with that's like toxic and dangerous, and like I ended up having to, like, for the like complete transparency, first 3 weeks I was off campus, I did no work. Almost took a month off from school, like no contact with professors, like no nothing. Like I just like was not in the mental state to work. Like it was like the only thing I could focus on at that time was my like job that I ultimately left because of COVID, but it's like all I was focused on when the pandemic started was, it's like, fuck, I need to like keep making money, because it's like my chief concern like wasn't really school at the time. It was like I need to keep working, I need to keep having some sort of income, because sooner or later my job might just like shut down. Like thankfully I worked for a place that was an essential business, so like we were like, I was like a wholesale picker or whatever. I did like deliveries in the morning and shit, but like all I was worried about was working, like school. So like I checked out from school, I kept working, and then after a while I was like, fuck, like I'm paying for this, I have to keep doing my school shit.
Yeah, well, it's so tough too, especially while you mentioned being an essential worker, but the thing is, even if you can still continue to make income, you're putting yourself at such a huge risk, and then on top of it, you're going to school and interacting with people coming from different places, so that's like a double whammy of exposure. And then for them to be like, all right, you have to get all this work in, you know, right before finals, like I'd be like, yo, fuck that.
It was scary because like my job I was working too was a delivery job. So I was going into 40 different environments every day of a kitchen and like most restaurants, this was almost all Worcester deliveries. Most restaurants in Worcester, no one was wearing masks when this shit started. It's like we work in the kitchen where we see the same people every day. Like this isn't a big deal, but I think that it spread so fast in Worcester, partly because so many people work in the service industry in general. Like nobody was concerned about it. When this shit started and I was doing deliveries, I wasn't wearing a mask. Our boss wasn't requiring us. He wasn't doing shit, and like I ultimately left because he wasn't giving us PPE. And like at the time, I didn't have like access. I ended up having to have my girlfriend's mom that was making masks. She made a few for me because I had no way to get in.
Yo, that's so
like, dude, it was fucked. And I left my job because I wasn't getting paid enough. It was like a minimum wage fucking job, but it's like, dude, I'm not gonna get exposed to like 50 different people every day and like potentially get sick and give it to my roommates or whatever.
Yeah, even with my internship over at Mahoney, being like a gallery assistant, like the fact that that was only a 4-month experience and half of it got cut due to the pandemic still. And like, I think it was, I had my very last week physically on campus was just 3 days. It was Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but I was still working on the second exhibition, local ecologies.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and just packing that up. But the thing was like day 2, I was already, I don't know, my experience in general is like, whenever you're coming out of winter and into spring, that's when my sneezing fits and allergies and all that stuff starts to kick in.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, I didn't get hit hard in the winter because winters I usually get slumped. I catch the the full 9 yards.
Oh yeah.
But I was doing good. But then right around that week, like the first week of the state lockdown, but I still had to come up to Lowell. Like I was fucking sneezing and all this other shit, and I was still living on campus. And day 2 of 3 of that last week, Deb was like, yeah, I think after this, I'm not coming back for Friday. This is what we gotta do to wrap up. If you can do that, like, that's cool. Like, me and her were already feeling kind of on edge, like, from the second we found out.
Oh, I get it.
Cause dude, fucking, even in February, yeah, Chumeng was just like, yo, there's a couple people up in Lawrence that apparently got infected and stuff like that, so be careful when you're out here in Lowell. And I was just like, yeah, but you know, I'm just still chilling in the same spot, living on South Campus, this, that, and the third. I don't really be going out like that. But the fact that it's at where it's at now, and I'm like, oh shit, like, to think even back then, like,
oh, I know.
For all we know, you know, before testing became available and there was even a basic state level plan to respond to this.
Oh yeah.
Like, you could have been in the thick of it.
No.
And walking around like you didn't know, and then all of a sudden, like, your breath gets short.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you start to lose sense in like your taste buds.
Yep.
I've heard some weird symptoms, like some people that I know that have gotten it have gotten rash of some sort.
Yeah,
like a really bad rash all over their body and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think my I don't know anybody, thankfully, that's had a really bad reaction to it, but I think my sister had that thing with like the toes. Like she had no symptoms, but she had like the toes. And it was really weird. I can remember, because my mom works in healthcare. So like since this, my mom, she wears like 2 masks. She tells me she wears so much shit. She gets tested all the time, but she was just exposed to someone she works with. She called me the other day. She used his keyboard right after him, and he tested positive. So she's like wicked worried she's gonna get it now.
I mean, they wear gloves though, right?
Yeah.
So then she could have peeled off.
Hopefully, yeah. It's just like so unnerving though, because it's like
any slight discrepancy.
Like you were saying, it could have happened in February. It's like on camera. Kids coming back from fucking going all over, you know, for vacation.
And it seems
and
like
shit.
with the progress that some states, at least up here in New England and just the general Northeast, that got hit, one of the first and, you know, essentially like the hardest in the country.
Yeah.
Like, we were starting to make serious progress, but then some people start to get comfortable, more large gatherings and stuff like that. But it's not as large as it used to be. Like, people having major rivers, but then, you know, younger kids pushing the line, and then boom, like a little town pandemic spread, or maybe some shit could be happening at like a factory somewhere.
Yeah.
And then one of my elder relatives, like, she got COVID back in March, and that was just as we moved her to a new medical rehabilitation facility because she was really old and she had a stroke. So she was undergoing rehab, and she was close to 90, and she managed to survive that stroke.
Oh, good for her.
Yeah, but then she caught COVID, and as we were moving her out of, you know, a really bad rehab place down in, like, I think it was like West Roxbury or some shit. You know, they weren't really taking good care of her because she somehow got injured while she was there. But anyway, aside from that, we thought she was all good because we moved her to a couple towns over at a really good place, and we checked out the room and everything. And mind you, this was in that same last time when I was still doing, you know, the internship and closing local ecologies, but then going up from Lowell, dealing with that potential worry, you know, down there. I was like, all right, at least we're getting this through. You know, we're seeing all the shit on the news, and then I'm seeing Governor Baker, you know, give some of his initial speeches about it, like, you know, and preparing people for what's to come. But then, boom, right as we leave her and I go to wrap up, like, the last of what I got to work on physically for my senior studio project on campus, and get that news, like, that she somehow got it. I was like, dude, like, for all this time and effort, it still wasn't enough.
Yeah.
To, like, shield somebody, because apparently someone who had wanted to go visit their relative that was in that nursing home / rehab center, they came, but they passed the screening. You know, and the screening's like 3 questions, so, like, you know, what's a little questionnaire gonna do to, like, gauge you if they're not physically taking your temperature, doing the genetic samples, like your, so I forget what it is, like saliva, mucus, or just, you know, the germs right there. And spreads that, and like sets like 6 out of the 7 people who initially got infected, including her, the relative. They all died except for her. So we were freaking out, and the whole time we can't get physical access to her. You know, we just could FaceTime and make sure that, you know.
Yeah.
And seeing her go through that process, dude, that was freaky. The way she recovered, I'm like, wow. I know I've seen miracles in my life, but nothing like this.
Yeah, right. That's crazy. God damn. Strong.